Hello everyone, welcome to another 3D design video brought to you by the Corona Public Library's Maker Exchange. My name is Mr. Martin, and today I'm showing you possible ideas on what to do after you've completed a print. Let's get started. One of the first things you can do is actually finish off your keychain. These little key rings with the chain are available through several retailers, and if you've created your 3D print with that in mind, you should be able to simply attach it to the loop and pinch it back in to secure it in place. And once you have that set and attached, then you have your very own keychain and you can place it wherever you'd like. Another procedure that you might have to undergo is to sand off any excess material. Here we had a print that didn't quite go exactly as planned. So I'm going to pinch off the excess material and simply sand down the spots that remain. Now this lets me get a nicer finish. For example, if I were trying to fit pieces together, like what we did with our pop-out gift idea, well, if we're building a toy with several pieces, we want to make sure that those pieces fit well. And so you can simply continue to peel off and sand down until the acquired or the desired fit is achieved. Now, one thing to note here, I am sanding across the layers. It is better to sand with the layers just to make sure that you're not actually physically peeling off layer by layer on your own. And in the end, to just make sure that your structure still maintains its stability and that you're not forcing any layers apart. Now with this smaller one, it did print well, but there was still some material and some layers that wasn't as smooth as I wanted it to be. So just quickly taking the sandpaper, rubbing it across, and you can see that it ends up being quite a nice fine flat surface. This is also very helpful if you ever have to smooth out your base layer. Many times you may need to adjust the base layer settings, and so it will come out with a different finish compared to the rest of the object. You can always sand down both sides or even multiple sides of an object just to make sure you achieve a nice standard finish all around. Perhaps one of the most fun things to do with the print is to actually print it. I have here a little miniature we've printed. We're going to take some standard acrylic paint, nothing too fancy, nice blue and white. We've got our cup of water. We have our mixing tray. Of course, you need paint brushes and just something to dry them off on, and we're ready to paint. While painting, especially miniatures, you want to make sure that you're trying to be as detailed as possible. It's okay to take your time, even if you're not using too much paint. You can always wait for the paint to dry and paint more layers later. Now for this, you do want to make sure that your material is at least paintable. We're using regular PLA here, which we know acrylic paint will dry on, and it'll be just fine. Now I could have chosen a better color for the print. The bright neon does contrast a bit under this white that I'm adding, but again, I can always wait for that paint to dry and add more layers on top of that. Once I'm done with one side, I'm going to flip it over and finish off the sides before I move on to painting the base blue. Now another thing to note is I do have a piece of paper underneath my object here. Not only does this help with possible paint splashes, but when it comes time to rotate the object and there's wet paint all over, I can simply use the paper to rotate it around as necessary. For this paint project in particular, I did end up setting it aside for a bit while I waited for the base layers to dry. I then ended up using more paint and more layers on top of that later, mostly just to add some more detail. Now I did end up making some oopsies then anyways, but again, if you ever do, you can always wait for the paint to dry and simply paint on over it after that. The focus should be on being detailed, especially when you're dealing with small objects like this. But again, use some common tools at your disposal, use the smaller paintbrushes, and use that paper to rotate the object as necessary. And of course, you might actually want to put your project together. Now with this train, since we printed it in multiple pieces, we're obviously going to need to snap these wheels on. We designed it with that in mind, and so all we have to do is remove each item from the build plate. If we wanted to paint them, we can do so now and then wait for them to dry, and once dry, go ahead and snap them on. Now it does take a bit of force in this case. The tolerances here were pretty tight, but we ended up making it work. The wheels end up rolling in the end, which is always nice. And we get a nice little toy that we've created on our own. You can use this method to create more useful objects, but in this case, toys tends to be a really fun starter. That does it for today's video, everyone. Thank you for watching. Until next time.